Adapted and overcome, right? We're used to that.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. So, thank you very much for having me here. Chief Styles, I really appreciate you putting this together. This is an awesome opportunity for all of us to get up and educate. I was in your shoes at one point, a long time ago. Our boots, yes. But this story I actually call The Invisible War. So it was my invisible war when I was going through it. And basically I was waging war against myself. I was suffering with bulimia. First of all, though, I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions before I actually get into the details of my story. But I think a lot of you are going to find that you relate to some of my character traits that I kind of developed over time. And I want this to be a little interactive, so I'm going to ask you to raise your hand or shake your head, so please do. No sleeping right now. That's probably the lunch hour. But how many of you know someone right now with an eating disorder? That's a lot of people. And how many of you are in the military? Okay, about the same amount of hands. Next slide. Okay, people are going to pop up here. Now, I want you to think in your heads, like, who in this picture is the most realistic to have an eating disorder? Who would you think in this picture would have an eating disorder? Right. Most of you might think like the skinny model or the young girl. Well, the truth is all of them could have it. This girl on the left here is Cammie. She's one of my friends. She's a CrossFit athlete. And she doesn't have one, thankfully, but someone like her could. The guy up in the right-hand corner with the towel around his neck, he could potentially have one too. Next slide, please. All right, there's a lot of stereotypes for eating disorders, and usually I thought when I was developing bulimia, it was kind of centered around being an adolescent white female, and that's definitely not true. It could be anybody. I just finished PT school not too long ago, and 4 out of the 5 military members that were in PT school actually came forth with having suffered an eating disorder at one point. 2 were bulimic, anorexic, and then not otherwise specified for the others. Okay, so this picture, do you guys know who this is?
Yes.
Yeah, 33rd Commandant, General Haig. Okay, so I learned about the balance of mind, body, spirit when I was at TBS, the basic school. Otherwise, there's other names for it too, I'd like to call it, but it wasn't an enjoyable school. But this is when I first learned, as a leader, we need to be balanced. Who here is balanced, completely, mind, body, spirit? Raise your hand. Okay, well, awesome, we need to talk to you. And that's okay. That doesn't mean your mind, body, spirit has to be balanced at one time. At the time, I thought it did. And so I after I listened to the Commandant's speech to all the young lieutenants, I was like, all right, I gotta get my shit together. So, as a young lieutenant, I took his advice to heart. And, however, I found that in reality, I couldn't balance everything. I couldn't. Physical took over sometimes, mental took over, and spiritual took over. And that's just the way life goes. If throws you punches, you gotta roll with it, right? You get a deck of cards, you gotta roll with it. Well, I wasn't really good at rolling with it. I like to control. I like to have control. That's why I became an officer. So that was a punch. Okay. I loved being a Marine Corps officer. It was one of my favorite memories, and I miss it to this day. So, one of the things about the military is it brings a lot of different kind of personalities, right? A lot of type A, type B, type F, type X. So, it's like the melting pot. And it just so happens in that melting pot, you're going to get people dealing with stress in different ways. So like Dr. Kim mentioned, you have people that might deal with stress normal. They might go home and exercise and spend time with their family. Other people might eat more. Other people might go to alcohol. Other people might go to drugs. There's all different ways, healthy ways and good and bad ways. And I know all of us can say at one point they've abused something in their life. Food, drugs, alcohol, sex could even be one. go hand in hand. When I was a platoon commander, I definitely could pick out the Marines that were struggling with alcohol. I could pick out the ones, I had 3 females in my platoon of 54 men, 2 of which were raped. You think they have issues? Yeah, they're going to have issues. So, the way we handle stress, all of us are going to be different, but we happen to be in a profession where stress is just like an everyday thing. So, now on to my story. The Invisible War. I'm going to first start with how I grew up, because I think that's kind of an important thing to understand. I grew up in a family of mostly all guys. I had 2 older brothers. You can switch to the next slide now. And you're going to see that I am the shortest in my family. So I grew up in a log cabin in Seattle, Washington, and my mother passed away when I was 10. So my father and my 2 brothers and I had a great time together. But we did stuff in the logs with my mother, which was hard for me, especially growing up. From a very young age, I was driven to be the best. Very competitive family. Our Sundays would consist of probably playing basketball, 2-on-2 basketball, and any other sport, you name it. It was always a competition in my household. And I always wanted to win, but I never did, because I was the littlest. I was one of those girls that I wanted to be a Boy Scout versus a Girl Scout, because one, Boy Scouts got a hike. Girl Scouts bake cookies. You know, that was pretty boring to me. So naturally, my brothers were like my heroes, and I wanted to be like them. My oldest brother went to become an officer in the Marine Corps. This is my family here. From the left, or right, my right, your left, is my brother Paul. He was a sergeant with 1st Scots Company, which is actually right around the corner. That's me in the middle. I'm a little more blonde then. I think that was the dye. That's my dad. He actually became a Catholic priest. Yes, married men can become Catholic priests. And then on the right, the right, far end, is my oldest brother, who's an officer in the Marine Corps, and he was a pilot. So I got my 2 brothers growing up, awesome to be around, became Marines, and I was like, I'm going to be a Marine too. But they definitely, trained me. They're like, Theresa, if you're going to be a Marine, you better be a good female Marine. Do not fit into the stereotype of what female officers enlisted are like. They don't take offense to this, but they gave me all the stereotypes of what a woman could be in the military, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is in society. If a woman, this is the advice they told me, if a woman messes up, it's looked at you a lot. You're looked at upon a lot more than if a man messes up. So whatever that was, I wasn't out to beat anybody. I was out to be kick-ass. So I wanted to be the top female officer. I wanted to beat everyone physically. Again, I think you're getting the picture. I just wanted to be the best. Hands down. Thank you. So, all right. Next picture. And growing up, I really didn't have any eating issues. It was more, I was a performance junkie. I played 3 sports in high school, was recruited to play in college. Performance was my thing, that's how I was known. So my self-esteem and body image was defined by performance. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I had friends, but my dad had a pretty tight leash on me. As you can imagine, Catholic priest, daughter, didn't get a date much. So I pretty much came home from school and studied, trained, and went to bed. So here's college. I really let loose in college. 3,000 miles away from home, I went to Villanova University, and I was going to redefine myself. I love my family dearly, but I was ready to be on my own. But it was scary. I couldn't just go to college like I would do. I did ROTC, and I was a varsity softball player. So I played about 80 games a year, and then, of course, had to train in the morning for ROTC. And on paper, I did really well. I was the Big East Pitcher of the Year, an All-American, and was ranked #1 in my OCS class. So performance was, that was important to me. That's how I defined myself. the more competitive, the more successful I was, the harder I was on myself. So the next thing, of course, to add onto my plate when I was in college, and of course I made some really good girlfriends, which one is here today, thankfully. And I haven't seen her in like 9 years, so it's pretty special. So the next slide. So this is going to be a funny picture, but who's heard of Body for Life? It's like 6 meals a day, give 1 free day. So I did Body for Life in college, on top of everything else I was doing. I didn't get enough training, God forbid. But I decided to do this competition with my family. And honestly, my brothers and I did it for my dad, because my dad had lost his best friend, you know, and he put all of his attention to his kids. You guys might have parents or family that you can relate to that just when they lose a loved one, it's like they lose part of themselves. And so my dad, this was before he became a Catholic priest, we did this program together, and we were going to get my dad, like he lost like 45 pounds doing this workout training, and I was so incredibly proud of him. I thought he should win, because he put his heart and soul into it, and he felt like he was back in high school again. I did it as well, and I ended up winning the thing, which is pretty cool. But with my personality and high performing, I started getting noticed as like fitness, oh, you look so good, like all these compliments about my body. And now it wasn't just performance, it was like, oh, you look good. And guys started paying attention to me, and I wasn't used to that. Like I grew up with a very, very strict family. So I kind of fed into that, and that eating, the very strict eating of 6 meals a day, and having 1 free day became pretty disordered for me. I took that free day as a binge day. And that binge day turned into a couple binge days, and then followed by not eating for a few days. So I didn't throw up, but you can see how that kind of can be, you started getting disordered. And I ran my PFTs. I was still able to perform, and quite frankly, this program helped me in softball. Like during my softball season, it kept me disciplined until the point when I couldn't control it anymore. I couldn't control the binge. When I started eating food that I craved, I just kept eating it. And so I wouldn't say the root of my issue came from I can't handle food. It was I just needed to perform, and I wanted to look good and be good, be the best. So that was a struggle for me. From winning the Body for Life, I also got fitness modeling jobs. So again, more pressure on myself. And really it was self-induced. Like a lot of pressure that we put on yourselves, you guys, if you could take one thing, is from ourselves. So, you know, screw it. People think you're bigger or smaller or whatever. I can tell you that now. At the time, I was pretty hard on myself. So that self-inflicted pressure kept me going, kept me striving for perfection. Next slide. Okay, so this is me as a second lieutenant. These are my brothers down the corner. I was commissioned in 2003, and this is when the pressure was really on. Now I was female platoon commander in charge of 54 guys, lots of equipment, and I needed to look the part, act the part, and be the part. And now I was trained for war, so a lot more pressure. I can't say everyone I've worked for loved having a woman in their unit. That's okay. I could deal with that. But it was still hard internally. I really did internalize a lot during this time in the Marine Corps because, quite frankly, there wasn't a lot of people I could talk to. Or I was scared to talk to. The cool thing about being an engineer officer, though, is like when you go to the bar, I mean, that's my job is to blow stuff up and build things. So they ask me what I do, and I'm like, do you really want to know? I'm kind of a dangerous woman. People laugh at that. Okay, anyway. So, while I was in the Marine Corps, I continued this disordered eating pattern. And it got a lot worse. During my first year as a Marine Corps officer, I did a fitness